My name is Christopher Bishop. I work at IBM corporate headquarters. I work in strategic communications, supporting executives in global finance. I just moved to that role. I've been in corporate citizenship for a couple of years before that. I'll talk a little bit about other IBM roles as we get into this. The catalyst for this conversation, for this set of concepts, was a request from my alma mater, Bennington College, to give a keynote address to kick off a senior week set of activities. So I thought, well, what can I talk about related to my Bennington education, the sort of broad, self-directed liberal arts education that's turned into a set of 6 different careers for me. So I thought, well, let me talk about how I did that, how I navigated through these careers and try to codify them into some processes or protocols that could be shared, because I think, with all lack of modesty, I'm somewhat of the poster child for how kids are going to work in the 21st century. It's going to be a very, very different model from my colleagues at IBM who've been there 35 years doing the same thing at the same company over and over. So my objective in coming to Bellagio is to develop some workshop materials. And some of you have seen I have a whole wall full of flip charts with some ideas about how this might work. And I'm going to take you through this deck fairly quickly. Some of you may have seen my machinima, which is on a flash drive in the library. It's a little movie that I directed and wrote in Second Life. So a little bit of that, and then I've set up some activities that I want to do. This is one of my workshop activities. I want to get to that when we're done with this. So, audience participation. So this is a Gantt chart that I put together sort of describing these various careers that I've had. And I'll go into some detail. I have some funny pictures that are quite entertaining. But I went from being, I graduated Bennington with a degree in German literature. That's what I majored in. I minored in music, gave a recital, playing string bass, and ended up with a rock band singing, "Bet you didn't think I knew how to rock and roll." Like a horn section, very Bennington-esque, you know. I got a gig right away with this touring country rock band. Went to New York, on and on, and I ended up making the leap. I call this sort of the digital divide, where I took my jingle producing skills and shifted them into this newly emerging technology called the web in about 1996. So, this is me in 1973. Hey, they're back. Billy Preston. In some dressing room somewhere. We toured about 185 days a year. I love this shot. This is me and Marty Slutsky, the guitar player. We were opening for Billy Preston in Omaha or something. It was an amazing experience. I did 3 albums with this band. Toured all over Europe and England, did a record at Electric Ladyland, Jimi Hendrix studio on 8th Street in Manhattan. Did a record at Bearsville, where Todd Lundgren and Dylan and the band recorded a lot of music. And as things go, you know, bands come and go, so this band sold a lot of records and then sort of faded. I want to mention that last summer we got together for the first time in 34 years, spent a week in Nashville in the studio, made sort of a reunion album that's on CD Baby. It was really fun. So after the band broke up, I moved to New York. Actually, just as an aside, Lee has been through all of this with me. Without his support, none of this would have happened. So it's been. She's seen So some kind of fun shots. So this is the Robert Palmer Band. We did a tour of England, or of Europe, in the summer of 1981. We played in 8 countries in a month. So the currency changed every couple of days. This was way before the euro. It was quite exciting. This is at the Copenhagen airport. We're playing at the Roskilde Festival, big outdoor festival outside of Denmark, Copenhagen. This is me and Peter O'Toole on the set of a TV movie that we did called Svengali. Jodie Foster and Elizabeth Ashley were also in this movie. We're playing Irish folk songs. Well, between when he was drinking. This is me in a band called FX with a guy I went to college with. Kind of a pop. There's a cool video on YouTube actually called Stimulation. Actually, I showed it to you can check that out. It's kind of fun. So playing in like a dozen different bands, living in Manhattan, running from one gig to the next, to a session, to a recording date, to a sound check. After doing that for a while, in coming back off the road from some tour with somebody, I said to myself, you know, how do you get to sleep in your own bed at night as a musician in Manhattan? So I began to ask friends, a little bit of networking and investigation. And they said, well, you do sessions. You get into the studio, and at 9 o'clock you show up and you read some music and sign a W-2, and then they send you a check. And you get to like be in town. And so I proceeded to break into the jingle business, basically through sheer dint of perseverance, because I was kind of viewed as a touring rock guy. But the trend in New York was shifting toward hiring like rock musicians who could really lay down a deep groove but also read and play a lot of different styles. So I first broke in as a player and then quickly realized that the people on the other side of the glass were making the money. Mm-hmm. So I started working as an arranger and then as a composer and then finally as a producer. I got my first job going indoors when I was 40. I started working at a jingle house running this instrument called the synclavier. It was the state-of-the-art digital musical instrument at the time. Lots of timbres stored on a Winchester drive, precursor to hard drives. It was about this big. I think it stored 512K worth of data, so if you know what that means, that's pretty small. But you could summon these timbres to the keyboard, record it all digitally, and chase lock using simply time code to picture, so you could lay in sound effects. And I wrote a lot of music for radio and TV commercials. Probably the most famous is the Kit Kat jingle. I actually played on it and then got to sing on it as well. And that ran for a long time. Give me a break, give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. So every time that would run on TV or radio, you know, you get a check. So that was a fun. I got sort of tired of it. It became sort of paint by numbers. It's very competitive. It's a high stress environment. Some creative director came in one night at 5 o'clock and said, I need this to sound like Duran Duran. I need 5 versions by tomorrow at 9. Another Duran Duran? I gotta do it. Yeah. So I said, what's some new technology that's emerging that I can maybe get into and change careers? A little career shift. So I took my jingle producing skills and shifted them to web production. I read a lot of books, I went to a lot of meetings, I talked to a lot of people, I surfed the web and looked at code, learned how to write HTML. I basically took skills, like in the jingle biz, you're dealing with a recording engineer and a guitar player and a drummer and a singer, and a client, a deliverable and a budget. So I just shifted that at a macro level to the web. So it was a copywriter, account director, a scripter, a graphic designer, and a client, a deliverable and a budget. So I was able to work as a freelance web producer, and I worked at a couple of seminal interactive agencies in New York, CKS Partners, which was an amazing company, and Eagle River Interactive, and produced a bunch of big corporate websites early on. The Johnson & Johnson corporate website had what's called a Verity database attached to it, so you could search global job opportunities, which was quite advanced in like 1997. So did that for a while, and then back to the networking concept. I met a woman on the train one day commuting into New York on a Sunday. We're both sort of commiserating, you know, having to go to New York to work on a Sunday. Pretty unpleasant. Anyway, she worked at IBM. So we kept in touch, and about a year and a half later, she sent me a note saying, you know, my department is expanding at IBM. Would you ever come, you know, work for the Big Blue? And I said, absolutely not. Like, what would I do at IBM? I mean, I'm like a rock and roll bass player, and I know how to produce websites and stuff. But so we'll just go down and talk to my VP and, you know, see how it goes. So I thought it'd be embarrassing, it'd be a joke, they'd laugh me out of the place and say, you know, we need people who really have skills, you know, not people who are just former musicians. And so I gave her my resume, she looked it over, I launched into my disclaimer. Yeah, I toured with Robert Palmer, I played with Chuck Berry, I played at the Bottom Line with Bo Diddley, and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, no, it's okay, I get it. She says, let's talk about a start date. I said, what? I said, maybe you didn't hear me. I said, I played with Robert Palmer. I did a lot of like, gigs late at night. And what? She's like, no, we need people who know how to do this, and you obviously know how to do it, so can you start next week? So needless to say, that's 13 years ago, and I've done a lot of different things at IBM. It's been an amazing experience. It's an amazing company, a lot of very interesting, creative, smart people driving the evolving business model there. I worked first as an account manager, evangelizing the use of the web and the internet across the business. And then I worked as an IT strategist helping guide technology spend to drive business models in the line, and then worked as a management consultant in a broader strategy team, and in fact wrote an acquisition strategy that led to IBM purchasing a very large internet security services firm, which is pretty amazing. Then decided I wanted to do something more creative, back to the sort of antenna thing in my slides, as you'll see. So I began investigating more creative marketing communications kinds of roles, and I was hired into human resources communications at headquarters to run an internal financial planning and education project, do all the communications. I started with branding, actually. I hired a firm, made a name for it, and I wrote all kinds of comms materials, directed a website development project as part of it. And then I was recruited to go back into the line and support a couple of general managers who were running multi-billion-dollar parts of IBM business in global technology services, building presentations and writing memos and managing web content. Then recruited back to headquarters to work in corporate citizenship, which is an amazing part of the business. Historically philanthropy, but they do a lot of really interesting work, including corporate service corps, where they send IBMers to emerging markets, and they work on the ground with local businesses and governments and NGOs to help figure out ways to use technology to improve the communities. And then just recently, I was recruited to go to global financing and use social media and provide some sort of technology perspective on that part of the business. So I've been there since June. It's been really interesting. They're very graciously letting me come here for a month. But they're excited about it. They realize, how special this is. So in thinking about how I did all of this, a couple of words came to mind. So metacognition, thinking about what you're thinking about. And then learning what I needed to learn. Like what am I going to have to do to go from being a jingle producer to being a web producer, from being a touring rock musician to playing sessions, or from a web producer to designing business strategy. So thinking about what it was I wanted to do, what I needed to learn, and then reinventing myself, learning whatever I needed to learn, however I needed to learn it, and then using that to move forward into these different roles. So to sum it up, rather than learning specific skills, my take is that today's learners, in order to be successful, need a whole other different set of skills. They need to be creative, certainly. They need to be able to deal with ambiguity, because it's changing, and it's changing fast, and it's changing faster and faster. They've got to be passionate about something. Look internally, find out what you really like to do, what's your bliss, what's your proclivity. You've got to be self-directed, because as technology makes the global workplace borderless and flat, you've got to be able to move and change. You've got to have a global perspective. You're going to be working with people all over the world now. It's just a matter of logging on, and you're connected. Once you jack in to the network, you're with them. And then having a sense of different disciplines. So for me, like understanding communication, the business strategy and technology, social media, I think those are the kind of skills that, again, will make people successful, having a bigger picture perspective. So a pretty surprising set of statistics. I love putting these up and talking about this. And I first heard this actually from, it was intimated by the headmaster at our son's school. He was saying 85% of the jobs that today's learners are going to be doing haven't been invented yet. And they're going to be using technology that doesn't exist today to solve problems that we don't yet know are problems. So that's a very different landscape from becoming an engineer and getting a job at the Jet Propulsion Lab, or becoming a journalist and working for like a newspaper or whatever. It's really different and exciting. So I view this as empowering and exciting. That, trying to get kids aware that there's a lot of potential, a lot of white space, a lot of unknown that they can help define. Another stat. Top 10, many of the top in-demand jobs in 2011 didn't exist in 2005. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see there were a lot of jobs that, iPad apps, so there wasn't an iPad. But now it's big business. IBM develops iPad apps, all the major publishers do. It's a big, big business. I just read about Björk, the Icelandic singer, who's released her album as an iPad app, and it has malleable content. You can control the sounds and the visuals. It's really quite amazing. So again, a whole new model. So this is just some ideas, right, of where this is going. And then, this is tied to our workshop later, but, so some of these jobs are kind of going on now, but this is, say, certainly in 10 years, these are the kind of jobs that may be out there, right? Nano-pharmacist, a metaverse event designer, lunar tour guide. Japan's got plans to put a hotel on the moon, I don't know if you're aware. And China's looking to identify land that they can manage as well. Holographic content, the next extrapolation out from 3D is obvious, it's going to be here at some point. The holographic stuff, and a virtual lawyer, that's what I'm hoping Hillary can lead. So I boil it down to what I call my secret sauce. Now these are sort of the three elements that I think are going to be key focus areas for today's learners. Antenna, which is an internal and external kind of evaluation. Brand, everybody has a brand now. And network. So let me take you through it quickly. To be successful, you got to go where it's crazy. Follow the chaos, chase the maelstrom. That's where you can contribute. If you get caught on the outside edges of the eddy, you're out of business. You're not viewed as being productive, and you run the risk of not having work. Trust your spidey sense. Trust your instincts. The universe will tell you if you're not doing the right thing. And follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell. Right. So, what makes sense to you? Where can you be happy contributing, and go for what's new? Certainly we know that companies have brands, and from a human perspective, historically, say movie stars and athletes have had brands, but nowadays you all have brands. Everybody has a brand. You've got to think of yourself as a branded commodity. What you do, it's the essence of who you are. It's what makes you unique. It's a way to establish your expertise, and it's part of everything you say and do, both from an analog and a digital perspective. So talking to people, carbon-based life forms in a room, or on Facebook or Twitter, it's all part of your brand. So someone could say, well, yeah, he's a musician, and he's a technologist, and he's a communicator, and philosopher, or whatever, but that's sort of his brand. So you see him on Machinima, that's sort of how I've represented it. The third one is an adage often ascribed to showbiz, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. But nowadays, it's true in every business, even more than ever before, and tied to this networking thing. It's a lifelong job, it never stops. It changes and shifts depending on what you're interested in doing and where you're focusing. But it's something you do sort of without thinking. It's like this friend of mine used to talk about spell checking. He says, you do it like breathing, without thinking. So try to add people to your network. Trusting strangers with experience and connecting with people that you don't know, but maybe have expertise in an area you're interested in learning more about. Nowadays, like with Google Plus and with Twitter, you can follow some really expert people that are sharing amazing information and perspective and links to content, and you probably will never ever meet them in person. They may be on the other side of the globe, but they have information that can help you grow and learn and expand. And use the tools. So the key to is not to get hung up in the tools. I know I talk a lot about Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus, but this is sort of the current point in time view, but these can all change. They're changing and being modified every day. Google Plus isn't on this list, for example. There are rumors that Facebook may be in trouble as Google Plus has the digerati and the technorati moving to a more adult kind of interactive space. So who knows? But anyway, don't get hung up on the tools, but be ready to use them. Okay, so that's sort of the truncated version of the pitch. What I want to do now is do a little exercise with all of you to try this workshop concept. Okay, so I want everybody to close their eyes. We're going to do some time travel, okay? Close your eyes and imagine anyone been to Mars 2112? What do you have? Back. Okay, so we're getting in the time machine. We're going ahead. 2020, we're going to go farther than that. 2025, no, let's go higher. Okay, 2030, let's stop here. All right, open your eyes. We're 2030. We're going to be looking at what the skill sets are. If you walked into an employment agency, you stepped out of the time machine in 2030, what kind of skills would they be looking for? So what I've done is I put up 5 categories of future jobs, and And I assign people to each of these, and I put little abstracts to get you thinking about these topics. And what I'd like to do is give you like 10 minutes to, and use your computers if you want to use Wikipedia or Google or whatever your search engine of choice is, and think about what the current skills are. So the premise is that none of these are net new, right? We're in 2030. People are going to be, virtual lawyers or lunar tour guides. These skills are going to leverage existing skills, but they're going to be some net new skills or new knowledge you're going to have to create or invent or leverage from existing skills. So I'm going to shut this down.